Hello everybody and welcome to my channel. Today I want to revisit a topic that I told when SwiftUI was just launched, and that's the safe area insets and how to work in a specific way with them. I'm gonna show you how we used to do things back then and how the API has evolved so we can learn something out of it and finally see how it should be done nowadays. In this video that I recorded in 2020, we had an example simulating kind of like a table view, and we wanted to put a button as a footer on the screen and make the button respect the safe areas, but the background of that footer extend them, which is a typical behavior that we see in many places in iOS. Back in the day, we had to use a weird geometry reader because there was no other easy way of doing this, at least at the time of the video. So let us start with this and see how things have evolved. So here I have the code from that original video. Here we have the simulation of kind of like a table view that you can see we can, drag, and it ends at the appropriate place. And then we have just kind of like a footer. And the key here is that we want the button to respect the safe areas, but we want that background to extend here. Originally, this was like a weird because you had to give some padding to the footer, but you didn't know how big to make that padding, so then you had to use the geometry reader, which, to be honest, back in the day we abused it a lot, and then use the computation of the geometry reader to actually put the correct padding. And that worked, but as some of you pointed out in the comments back in the day, it's very ugly, very dodgy. Like, the fact that you need to use the geometry reader for this feels very bad. And this is actually the API that it's now deprecated. The replacement was this, which is kind of the same. I think they just renamed the method to better align with API guidelines, but not much change. The thing that improved was that on iOS 13, the behavior of SwiftUI kind of changed. And as I pointed out on this post, there is another way of doing it. And I want to go from migrating this code into the next evolution because we can see some of the things that they're important to learn, because even though if we don't use this code anymore, it's still interesting to see how things have evolved so we can learn from them and pick up in some of the nice details about SwiftUI. So the first thing we did is just remove the geometry reader. We don't need this anymore. So the trick here is to not tell the view to extend over the bottom safe area, but to tell the background. And this is kind of weird because you're telling a color but the fact is that it's not just a color. This color gets actually converted into a view in SwiftUI, a view that is just that color, that's it. But you can treat it as any other view. So the fact is that you can go to this background, which is just a color, but it's actually a view. And you can tell it to extend further than the safe area at the bottom, right? And as you can see, this has not changed anything. It actually works as we expect, but we have gotten rid of that geometry reader, and it actually worked. I think that was around iOS 14 or something like that. And if we switch to this view where we see the actual frame of the views, we can see how the view itself, it's just respecting the safe area, so it stops here, but actually the background, which is the thing we have been telling to ignore and extend, it goes further. So that was kind of the status quo around, iOS 14, but then on iOS 15, a new and very nice API was released, which helps to do this way more nicely. And this is the new API, it's Safe Area Inset, and you can actually pass a view in it. So here, the idea of working with footers, like footers or headers or whatever you want to do around the safe areas, the idea of working with footers in this example, it's kind of reversed. We don't have a view and then we tell it to extend. We actually use this API that lets us put that view on the safe area and make it respect it. So let's take a look at this. So here, what we can change completely is we can get rid of this being inside a vstack because we don't need that anymore. We can just treat the content of our view, like the scroll view in this case, as the root of what we want to work with. And in this case, we can see how the insets are respecting the safe area. You can see that the inset stops here, but the scroll itself, as depicted by the gray background, goes further than it, and you can even see it go behind the dynamic island. Now, what you can do with this new API is actually say, I want to put content that it's on the bottom, but respects the safe area. And you do it by saying, where do you want to put this? Okay, I want to put it at the bottom. And what's the content? Is this content. And this content now is going to respect the safe area automatically. You don't even have to do anything. You can just put here background and that's it. So without doing anything else, now we have content that it's at the bottom edge of the screen, but it actually respects the safe area. The thing is that if we pay close attention, there is like a margin here that it ends too early, let's say. And that's because we can tell the API how much spacing we want to leave between the content and this footer. So for this, we can just get rid of everything. So it's nicely attached at the end. And you can see that now the things end just at the appropriate place and they go behind this. And this works even if we add more content. You can see how the content now is pushed up, but it's still respecting the safe area and still the background extends until it needs to. Much nicer than the old ways and even the original way of using Geometry Reader. Now with this simple API, you can just put your content on the edges of the screen, but actually respecting the safe areas. It's super nice, super clean, and very SwiftUI. And that's it for today. A simple update to an old topic that I wanted to revisit because this new API, it's quite nice and it shows how the declarative nature of SwiftUI can shine if it's designed with proper APIs in mind. So I hope you enjoyed, and if you learned something, remember to like and subscribe for more content like this. Thank you all for watching and see you next time.